Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and we each have more than 20 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we cover the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at IEN Magazine so you can get a notification when we go live every Thursday. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
I am recovering, David. As you guys know, I had a little bit of a sinus thing going on. So if I, dip into the Barry White monotone volume level, I apologize in advance. It could happen as we, the throat gets a bit fatigued here talking through.
How has the sleep to awake ratio? Have you been able to actually sleep for a prolonged period of time?
It's getting better.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely improving there. But
okay,
it was tough going about 3 or 4 nights there with about 2 hours of sleep. So
oof.
No, that just makes me feel tired.
Yeah.
A little dizzy.
Jeff, the studio is really warm. So if you feel
like curl up.
Yeah, just come in here, take a 15-minute power nap.
Yeah.
As many times as you need.
That's honestly, that was my advice to him too. I'm just like, well, if you're tired, go in the studio, because I just really want to.
Yeah, it is like a sauna in here sometimes.
Yeah, and those nice ambient lighting. Just very relaxing.
Well, in as many years as we've had the studio in whatever form, we've never really and joked about having like a couch or something in here. We just really got to get it done. Maybe a nice sectional for the old green screen section of the studio. Anna, how you doing this week?
Doing great.
Very good. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our new sponsor, CAI Solution. This week's episode is brought to you by ShopVue, a CAI solution. Managers and engineers face a wide variety of obstacles on the plant floor that weaken productivity. The root of these problems can often be tied to reliance on outdated data. Using yesterday's information to make today's decisions simply won't cut it. So download Benefits of Real-Time Production Monitoring in Manufacturing to find out why real-time production monitoring is becoming a must-have for manufacturers. You can find a link to the report below in the live chat. You can also find it in the body copy. Download a copy of the report and let us know what you think. Our first story this week: GM kills latest effort to revive Camaro. The last Camaro came off the assembly line in January 2024. When GM killed Chevy's Camaro in March 2023, Vice President Scott Bell said, quote, "Rest assured, this is not the end of Camaro's story." It may not be the end, but it appears to be paused indefinitely. The Camaro was put to bed because of declining sales, government regulations, and a general shift to electric vehicles. However, according to GM Authority, the automaker hasn't given up on the Camaro, but wants a next-gen model that is, quote, affordable and attainable. The last time it was on the market, it sold for between $32,000 and $50,000. An internal team recently came up with a business plan for a 7th-generation Camaro, and the effort had the support of some execs. But when they presented that plan, it was, quote, blown apart. The group simply didn't make a strong enough case for a new Camaro's market potential. Sources say a next-gen Camaro is, quote, still in play. But Anna, is it?
Well, there's a lot of chatter that kind of suggests it could go one way or the other. And I can't necessarily tell you why. You talked about the sales hit, right? Mm-hmm. Looking at the data, I'm not sure why, but as soon as the pandemic hit, the Camaro absolutely cratered in sales. If you look at between 2010 and 2016, GM peddled about 75 to 85K per year in the U.S. of these vehicles. And then from 2020 on, the Camaro has been lucky to hit 30,000 units annually in the U.S. It doesn't sell great globally. They sell it a little bit in Central America and Mexico. It's not a fit for Europe. It's got like 18 miles to the gallon in the city. So there's, outside of America, it's just the appeal of it is not great. And the appeal of it here is not great, apparently, also. Yeah. So, I know that some blame has been placed on like EPA targets and auto companies trying to create this fleet-wide goal of getting that number down. But I think there's a reason that this particular vehicle is getting picked off in the process. And that's because it's not selling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, observers are looking at several reasons for that. One, the marketing has been blamed by some observers, which I thought was interesting. Not being marketed well or effectively or adequately. So not enough. I think the other thing you have to look at is competition in this space. You got the Mustang, the Dodge Charger, both of which outsell the Camaro. So I don't know. There's rumors that this could come back as an SUV. I saw that.
Oh, interesting.
Not sure I love that idea.
No.
What I would do is just give it like 5 or 10 years and then re-release it, Yeah. I let people miss it, build up a little demand. I mean, I can see right now why trying to sell a pony car that's kind of expensive in this market when you have a lot of, issues kind of pressing on automotive going into the next year. Sure. I think, cut off a few models now that aren't selling well, but to kind of shoehorn this into an SUV, I don't think is a good plan.
And it hasn't been gone that long. It's March 2023, I think, when they made the announcement, right? The last model year was 2024. So people haven't had time to miss it.
No. And so there's no reason to to rush it back to market in some weird modified way. I just don't see the point.
Yeah. Just re-release it as an EV that doesn't look anything like it did previously and just, throw the plate on there.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. I don't think that's a great idea. Jeff, any insight as to why sales might have cratered during the pandemic? Because, with all the fervor around it immediately, I mean, like the Camaro would be a good car that you needed to jump into and get away in a pinch.
We needed to do that a lot during the pandemic.
The early stages of the pandemic,
what
people
were
were
you
thinking.
doing?
I was
What were you up
prepping.
to?
I was just like, I don't know where I need to run, but I need to run to, but I'm going to run there.
Jeff would just pop on a mask and hop into his pony car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how he's never gotten COVID.
Yeah.
So
always
great.
been running.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different things at play here. And I think what it's really easy to sort of gravitate towards are some of the social elements here when it comes to car buying. There's more focus on EVs or fuel efficiency or whatever the case is. And all that's true. But what really caught me is when you're talking about the Camaro, the next gen being affordable and attainable. Those are not words you associate with the Camaro.
No.
When I was when I was in high school, the Z28, that was the car.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted it because nobody could get it. It was a super fast car. It had a ridiculous engine. It was not a safe car to drive. Let's be real. If you were ever in one of those, early model Camaros, man, it was like, I don't know, it was a race car. It was loose. It was fast. It was not what we would consider today the ideal sedan, what people are going to spend money on. And to Anna's point, I agree with you 100%. It needs to go away for a little bit. Because right now, it just does not fit what people are looking for when they come to buying a car. And it doesn't fit with what Camaro is as a brand. People just aren't looking for that. We can talk about the Mustang, okay? But they also, to your point, or we were talking about the SUV version, the E-Mach Mustang, it actually outsold the traditional Mustang last year.
Yeah.
So the Mustang numbers aren't great. The Charger numbers aren't great because those types of vehicles they're a different type of buyer. And that buyer is looking for something cool and dangerous and fast. That's not what this is. So they're missing not only the mark for the general buyer, but they're also missing it for those enthusiasts of these types of vehicles. So there's a lot that needs to happen here. Quite honestly, I think the right thing for Camaro is to come out again, like Anna said, in a couple years, put a ridiculous V8 in there and sell it for about $75,000.
Yeah.
That is where your market is. That's where you're going to live because then you can sell 20,000 of these vehicles and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Trying to find that middle ground will not work.
Well, and a lot of readers pointed out, maybe some of these just get selected out. It's okay if we lose Camaro. As you look over the history of cars, a lot of really cool cars have just, gone away, been naturally selected out by the market. I
I think it's just hard when you look at some of these that have such a iconic history to them in the automotive side.
Yeah.
It's hard to say goodbye to them if you really have that endearing trait or endearing connection to them. But the reality is, even me, okay, like I just said, I wanted that Z28 when I was in high school. I have no interest in buying that right now.
No,
it's how do you, it's combating sort of that, I don't know, that affinity that you had for with the reality of where you're living right now.
It's like a lot of people said, I want to live in a world where there's more Camaros on the streets. It's like, well, buy one. Oh, no, I don't want one. Car Scoops reached out to a GM spokesperson just to clarify the report, because some people reported that GM was shutting down the project entirely, and they confirmed that. They confirmed that nothing's been confirmed by GM. But I just wanted to reemphasize that the original report was that they said, "Hey, we should probably bring this back or try. Tell us how you do it." And then they said, well, definitely not that way. Back to the drawing board.
No.
It wasn't just like, no, the Camaro is dead. It was just like, try again. All right. Well, our next most popular story this week. Massive fire breaks out at Pennsylvania aerospace manufacturer. PCC Fasteners, SPS Jenkintown, formerly known as SPS Technologies, makes aerospace fasteners and components. Around 9:30 p.m. Monday night, a fire broke out at the SPS plant in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. Witnesses saw flames and multiple explosions come from inside the warehouse, but all 60 employees were evacuated without any reported injuries. Immediately following the accident, nearby businesses and schools were closed, and officials ordered residents to shelter in place. The shelter-in-place order was in effect until the incident was under control because of the threat of smoke and other particulates. The shelter-in-place order has been lifted, but safety agencies are going to continue to monitor the area. And now that the fire is out, the investigation can begin. Anna, details are scarce, and we still have no idea what the root cause is, but it looks like part of the problem was the age of the facility, at least when it came to fighting the fire.
Yeah, so this was a very complex emergency when it happened. The Abington Township Police Chief, Patrick Malloy, gave a press conference following the event, and he explained that fire escalated to 4 alarms by 1 a.m. and nearly 70 fire companies responded to the building over the course of the night.
Wow.
Just to give you a feel for the scale of that. So he said that because of the low temperatures, it created some icy conditions at that blaze, and that was part of the challenge for them when they were putting out the fire. It was slippery. It was really hard to get around. And then he also added that when you looked at the size of the building, which was 500,000 plus square feet, it had multi-layers. He said that was that made it really difficult to access all the areas that they needed to get at. He said, our firefighters out in the weather and with equipment, it's very difficult to completely extinguish the fire. And by Tuesday of that week, the fire was mostly contained. I think they thought they were in good shape. And then suddenly the fire re-intensified again, and they were blaming that again on the weather. So black smoke again. I think they issued another order for people to kind of shelter in place. So pretty alarming when you consider the stakes that come along with that, building being very old. So this facility, I don't know how old the facility is. I know the company has been in Jenkintown since like 1903.
Yeah.
So it's like very long-standing business for that community. But yeah, you wonder if the fire would maybe have been contained more quickly had they had a different layout. And so, you look at all these manufacturing projects and these facilities where people say like, it's too old for us to renovate it. We need to move. Mm-hmm. This speaks to that equation, really. Like some of these, obviously it's a worst case scenario, but some of these issues that come up, we covered this once. Pertaining to a GM facility in Michigan where there was a battery fire, and the firefighters talked about afterwards how difficult it was for them to deal with the fire because they didn't have an up-to-date floor plan. Yeah. And it was such a huge space. Mm-hmm. All things that you have to take into consideration when you're a manufacturing company with a facility of that size, and especially with these multi-layers, some of the added risk that comes along with it is pretty serious.
Well, and I'll say that I understand why outside observers can hear something like the facility is so old that it complicated things and not really be able to wrap their head around it. But I'll just say, all of us have been in those facilities where it's just like, oh, this was the first factory. It's old. Jeff, do you have any insight as to, it made a lot of parts for aerospace and defense. What kind of impact do you think this might have on a supply chain?
A huge one, especially if it's this big of a facility putting out this much stuff. And I think it was credible. First of all, let's not gloss over 70 different fire companies responded to this. That is incredible.
Yeah.
And being in an environment where you're fighting a fire and it's too slippery to find your footing, that
terrifying.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like. That's crazy.
Yeah, like try to think of wherever you are listening or watching this and try to think of how far you would have to go to get 70 different fire companies to respond.
Yeah, the scale is incredible. And that's why they're still finding, I think up to like today, still finding hot pockets in here where there's still flame and stuff coming up. So crazy. A couple of things that stuck out for me too at this is they were talking about falling debris throughout this area. Now, I know we're talking about components and hardware, but in aerospace, do you have to worry about like IP and stuff like that with some of the, I understand.
Yeah, because it's land.
It's very basic and very simple, and it is a fire, so you'd think a lot of this is getting destroyed if it's actually on paper, if it's a blueprint or whatever you're talking about. But I don't know. I wonder what kind of like business continuity element comes into play with that.
Like fasting competitors are
like protecting it. I don't know.
Yeah, just walking around the streets looking for debris that fell, just like
I don't know. Maybe that's way out there, but you're talking about debris falling from this fire from miles around.
Yeah. No.
Obviously, it's a safety concern, number one, but you just kind of wonder about some of those types of things. And how does that play into a lot of your risk management strategies at this facility? Yes, you have to worry about a fire, number one, and having all these things in place that we're talking about, but geez, just controlling things from a proprietary perspective as well. And you're not really being selective as to who's coming in there for the right reasons to put out a fire or take care of people. So it's, I don't know, an interesting dynamic there that potentially they have to deal with as well.
No, that is a really interesting angle. And I don't know, that would be wild to hear a story where basically they lost some of their intellectual property just because someone picked it up off of somebody else's lawn. One thing that I was kind of encouraged by was the state almost immediately put up a dedicated page as to what happened with the incident, detailed information regarding water and air quality. I thought that they could be a little bit more forthright. Just officials didn't release any information on the chemicals that were being stored or used at the site, but safety officials did say that they were testing for stuff like hydrogen cyanide, chlorine, hydrogen sulfide, and sulfuric acid. I thought it was almost a great way to show how to manage a disaster response. Just like, this is what happened. Mm-hmm. This is how we're dealing with it. This is what we're testing for. But we can't tell you precisely what was there and what blew up.
Well, and 2 years ago, this company was fined, I believe it was $109,000 for improper storage of chemicals due to the fact that right now they're talking about the use of air scrubbers and other things that were put in place to control or to mitigate any type of pollution for the water and the air.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you want to be glass half full type of perspective here, maybe they learned from this huge fine that they did receive and took proper action. So when this happened.
No, I'm hoping that's it. But when you see that, 18 months ago, they were fined for bad storage of, quote, ignitables.
Yeah.
That's, well, let's just see what we find in the impending investigation. All right, our next most popular story, Isuzu's $280 million South Carolina factory will make trucks in a whole new way. Last week, Isuzu Motors? They do an entirely different thing these days. Last week, Isuzu Motors... Oh, no. Don't. It's going to happen. No, I got it. Last week, Isuzu Motors announced plans to build a $280 million facility in Piedmont, South Carolina. The automaker says the plant will boost its North American supply chain specifically for commercial vehicles. The new 93,000 square meter plant is scheduled to open in 2027 and create some 700 jobs by 2028. The plant will make 50,000 vehicles annually once production is fully ramped in 2030. And the site is about 750,000 square meters. So the company is going to be able to store all completed trucks at a single site, which is a big deal. The plant will make commercial trucks, including BEV and gas models of the company's N Series and diesel models of the company's F Series. Isuzu Motors says the new factory will debut a variable volume production system that can also respond to demand for internal combustion engine vehicles. The factory will be Isuzu's first to use a production line without conveyors or pits. The company says it will be a highly advanced line that maximizes flexibility and scalability. For example, the facility is going to automate inspections to eliminate operational errors, ensure traceability of parts, and introduce image inspections and other methods to prevent any outflow of defective products. Isuzu has been in North America since 1984. The company achieved record high sales in the last fiscal year, selling 44,000 vehicles wholesale to local distributors. North America is a key market for the automaker, and Isuzu is looking to boost manufacturing sales and service in the territory. Jeff, did you know Isuzu was still around?
I did know that they still made the industrial trucks. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think they made commercial vehicles. I don't think they do commercial cars.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's only this side of the business that remained.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. In looking at the article, it kind of felt like they wanted to build a plant here for something. They're definitely going to build something. We're not sure what it's going to be, but we're going to build something.
Yeah.
And it's going to be good. And we're going to put all this tech in place, which some of this stuff should be there anyway. And they're kind of, tooting their own horn about having things in place for inspections and preventing defective products. Like, yeah, you should have that.
Yeah,
that's
not
kind of
not as state of the art as maybe I think it is. But I mean, maybe they're buying the best of what's out there right now.
They're doing it.
Yeah.
They are definitely doing it. So and I think it was interesting, too, when you brought up no conveyor belts. At first, that kind of threw me, especially for an automotive facility.
Yeah.
But again, if they're looking to be able to scale up or down for whatever they're going to build there, that makes sense in terms of if they're looking at doing quick changeovers and things like that, which we've looked at in a number of different industries and how that saps time and profitability, makes a lot of sense then to have something more fluid in place, whether they're going to use some sort of hoisting method, whether it's going to be more manual, like pushing things down the line.
Yeah.
Whatever the case is, if that helps them from a scalability perspective, makes a ton of sense than rather than investing in all of that conveying equipment right up front.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting.
And they kind of they went out of their way to be like, we're going to watch the market. Hey, if you want more BEVs, we're going to make more BEVs. But if you don't, we can also make gas. And we can make it all in the same line. And it's going to be real easy. Anna, what were your thoughts on Isuzu? And when you said don't, I will say there was that pause. And I was just like, oh no, if I say motors wrong one more time, it's really going to go downhill from
Well,
there.
I was just trying to give you permission to just move forward, not have to go back and try again and try again.
Yep. And you know what? Thank you.
Because David is that guy to just let it go.
Right.
Oh yeah, no, I'm the hole in 12 guy. Where it's just like I'm going to make that shot. It doesn't matter if it sandbags everything.
Well, I looking at this too, it was like, I agree with you guys. It was, this is the goal for automakers is try to create a flexible production line where they can do multiple things at once and shift with the market. It's a lot easier said than done. A lot of automakers have gotten strung up on this concept for sure in the past. I thought that some of the notes around automating inspection were notable. Not every factory is doing that, especially in auto. Like that's a very, it can be a very manual, time-intensive process. We've seen tons of companies spend a lot of money on recalls. So, and then some of the stuff that we've been seeing with artificial intelligence and how facilities are now getting the technology that they need to leverage that within plants for things like automated inspection. Or I know that they said that they wanted to eliminate operational errors. So I've seen some interesting demos from tech companies this year that are using AI to pinpoint if something goes awry in the process. So you can alert a manager for something even extremely small, like you're missing a sticker.
Yeah.
But I mean, we ran a story on Toyota issuing a recall
over stickers.
I mean, like this is the kind of stuff that like the ROI on that will pay back rather quickly. So if they're not yet doing that at Isuzu, this is an important distinction for them to move forward and be successful, I think. It'll have a quick ROI. I think it's interesting because auto for so long has been at the cutting edge of manufacturing, whether that's process improvement techniques, being the first with cutting edge technologies, whatever it may be. But interesting to see that even a low volume player in the US like Isuzu seems to be doing that too. So
no, I liked a couple of things that they were looking at too, because I mean, I do see how, Jeff, you can see it as, they're putting a lot of irons in the fire, just like, hey, we're going to do anything. But I like how they also plan, last April, they came out with this plan that they called the Isuzu transformation, which they want to expand in 3 different areas. And they expect it to contribute to $6.6 billion in sales by the 2030s. They want new revenue streams developed in autonomous driving solutions, connected services, and carbon neutral solutions. And, I think that it's great that a company like Isuzu that basically is like, okay, we do these commercial trucks and people buy them and they love them. But, they're also like, but we could do a little bit more. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of potential for this, footprint to expand in South Carolina.
No, I'd agree. I was not being, critical of the approach. I mean, they're watching the market, which is what anybody in automotive should be doing right now. It's pretty unpredictable, and see what the winner is in that particular market for them.
Yeah. And Anna, when you talk about like AI catching things like stickers and, it just makes me think of all those years that Jeff talked about how you got to do the blocking and tackling. And luckily no one's got to block and tackle anymore because that's why AI's here for the blocking and tackling. Yeah. We can go right into the specialists. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't need it anymore.
Good luck with that.
AI layer over the top.
It's a layer.
All right. Our next most popular story. Boeing aims to shut down, quote, shadow factories. Boeing knows that current production rates can't keep up with sales. Still, the aircraft manufacturer hopes to return to greatness, a time before the deadly crashes in 2018 and 2019 and last year's mid-flight door plug debacle. To make it happen, the Wall Street Journal says the plane maker wants to empty the aircraft stored in its shadow factories. According to Boeing, a shadow factory is a production line where mechanics and engineers fix, maintain, and update planes rather than build new ones. For example, Boeing uses shadow factories in Moses Lake and Everett, Washington, to work on its 737 MAXs and 787 Dreamliners. About a year ago, the company believed it had some 225 jets in shadow factories. While that number dropped to 115 in 2025, these factories often demand Boeing's top talent, and reworks and inspections sometimes take longer than making a new plane. The Maxes are idle after the global grounding that followed the crashes. The 787s are awaiting checks to make sure the aircraft parts receive proper assembly after concerns regarding the production process. The Wall Street Journal says Boeing plans to make 38 737 MAXs each month by mid-2025, and the shadow factories should be closed by about the same time. Analysts think Boeing made about 20 737 MAX aircraft in January. Anna, will this change be enough to brighten the long shadow cast on the plane maker?
I don't know. I think this is a very ambitious pledge that Boeing is making right now. So let's back up a little bit. So estimates have suggested that as much as 30% of a Boeing employee's job is fixing something that went wrong.
Yeah.
So the idea here is, without dealing with what's going on in the shadow factories, that Boeing is going to stand to get a lot of raw worker hours back by doing this. The idea, though, is that Boeing needs to address quality control and production processes before closing the shadow factories, but that closing them will put them in this strong position when production ramps back up. But doesn't it seem like a big ask for Boeing to just say, like, just solve the quality control issues? Like, I know that they have a new CEO and this is a big priority for the company. I get that. But if they were capable of doing this already, they would have, right? So this is like a big thing to dig out of. 30% of work time spent on rework is a massive issue. But I find it unlikely that they're going to be able to just close the book on this, start fresh, and just move on. And then we're just going to make planes and they're going to be perfect now.
Yeah.
We're not going to have any need for any of this. Like, I understand that like they have a lot of backlog of this stuff to fix from all of the groundings.
Yeah.
But I do have some concerns of like that's their past and this is their future. I think there's maybe a lot more overlap there, that they still have a lot of things to work out. You know, It just seems like this is a great idea in theory, and I would love to see that happen. But my expectation is that they're not there yet.
True. I mean, it seems incredibly ambitious for Kelly Ortberg to say, get them out the door and double production and do it in about 4 months, right? Because he wants it by the middle of the year.
Right. And then everything we do after that is just going to be perfect from the jump. And so we're going to be 100% productive with our man hours. No problems. Like we've seen nothing but problems for so long.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to believe it, I guess.
Yeah. Clean slate. Just turn all the lights off, turn them back on again. It's just like restarting a computer. Jeff, this is not a new plan, right? So Boeing said these shadow factories were actually going to be closed by the end of last year. And they did about 110 jets last year, right? They want to clear out another 115 by the end of this year or by the middle of this year. Don't you think that will prove challenging? And like to Anna's point, you don't want to rush through aircraft that have already been grounded because of safety problems.
Yeah, I guess I'm really this one confuses me, to be very honest, because I've always looked at these shadow factories as sort of where you do your troubleshooting. Yeah. Hence the name, kind of behind closed doors. Like, we've got this stuff over here, we're figuring it out. Yeah. And that's where we can disseminate information to the rest of the company based on what we've learned over here and how we learned to address the problems. Those seem like important facilities for a company like Boeing to have right now. Yeah. So I don't understand why there's such a focus on shutting them down. I understand why there's a focus on, hey, we've basically got these 90% made aircraft. Let's get them out the door to take care of some of this back order. Yeah. That part I understand. Shutting down the facilities based on what their operational prerogatives are, that I do not get. I really am struggling to understand that. What I do kind of wonder, though, is if some of the pressure that Boeing is facing isn't just from their stakeholders or stockholders. It's got to also be from the airlines, correct? Yeah. And what I would pose to you guys is you've got airlines canceling routes, doing less business because they don't have enough planes. Do they care about Boeing solving their quality issues? And I know on the surface that sounds like, of course they do. They don't want a plane to crash. They don't want a door flying off. But in the reality of it, do they look at that as stuff like, hey, get me the plane, we'll figure out this stuff later on? Like, because that feels like what's driving Boeing right now. There's no solution here. We've got two people. It's Airbus and Boeing. Nobody else is coming to the forefront to sort of lighten the load on some of these plane inventory issues. Are the airlines sort of almost playing a big part in Boeing not addressing some of the quality concerns that they should be?
Well, I mean, they did say that, the biggest challenge is they keep making more sales and they keep lagging behind in production. I would assume that the airlines do play a big role in that. But I mean, you also, like, given the accident that we saw with Delta this week, I think that you see something like that, and it seems like maybe they're just in the news more, but they seem like they may be occurring a little bit more often. I don't know. I think that you need to be really careful in terms of rushing an aircraft you're not 100% solid on to market. I don't know. Anna, what do you think?
Well, I mean, that was always the narrative when people were really looking into Boeing's problems, was this idea that they were rushing things to market and quality control was taking a back seat because they needed to get these planes out the door. I don't think they can move forward that way, especially under the scrutiny of the FAA. So I don't know, but you do wonder, like, where is that pressure coming from? Is it coming from the executive team? Is it coming from, the stockholders? Is it coming from the airlines, their customers? Maybe it's a combination of everybody. Yeah. But they were not shouldering that very well prior to the big situation that kind of triggered the shutdown.
Yeah, because it can't just be driven by it's a bad look, right? Because you need to focus on quality and safety right now.
It just feels like they're trying to serve so many masters here and making bad decisions at every turn. Yeah. You're trying to make the customer happy by getting them planes and getting stuff out the door, which you'd think would then also make your stockholders happy, which then would bring more revenue in to make everybody else happy, but you didn't fix the core issue. Yeah. They didn't block and tackle here yet, David.
They didn't have that AI layer baked in. I mean, maybe it could be as simple as he wants people, nose to the grindstone at these two factories, and just like, maybe it's just a simple workforce thing. Maybe he's just like, hey, I need more out of you guys, and we need to get these out of the door. I don't know.
Yeah, this is just another kind of head scratching move.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about company culture at a lot of different places and what a role that plays in terms like safety, quality. It feels like they've got a hodgepodge of issues here, but maybe one of the bigger ones is culture here as well, in terms of people taking pride in what they do, to making sure it's done right, not just getting it out the door.
Well, and I get it. Your top talent is on it. I mean, maybe you just pull them out of the shadow factories and just start making new planes. Maybe this entire project gets back burner, and you just go to making as many new planes as possible, because I think that's one thing that is completely left out of this equation, is how they made 20 in January. They want to be making 38 a month by June or middle of the year.
But are the shadow factory planes like planes that are like ahead in the queue of these new planes, right? So I don't know you can back burner those. Have they already been delivered and then brought back? Or so like...
Oh, no, because weren't these were planes that I believe were not delivered, but were grounded before they were delivered.
So they were ordered MAX jets from years ago.
Yeah.
They got to get those done first.
Yeah. But I'm saying, if it's like such a drag, if it's easier to make a new one, those are parts. No, I don't know. We're just looking at every angle.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Our most popular story this week. Toyota's best-selling trucks have a mud problem. Toyota recalled more than 100,000 Tacoma pickup trucks, and the details are a little muddy. According to the recall, the affected four-wheel drive vehicles have 16-inch brake systems with hoses that transfer brake fluid under hydraulic pressure to the calipers for braking. The positioning of the components, paired with 17-inch wheels, means that mud and dirt can build up on the interior of the wheels and possibly come into contact with the brake hoses. Over time, this damages and wears through the brake hoses, causing a brake fluid leak, which makes your brakes work not so good. After Toyota began receiving reports of vehicles with rear brake hose leaks, it reviewed its manufacturing practices and design. It narrowed down the issue and recalled more than 106,000 vehicles made from January 24 to January 25. The Tacoma is one of Toyota's best-selling vehicles and, according to the company, the #1 small pickup truck in America for 20 years running. Yuck, Anna. These trucks are getting stuck because of the muck.
Yep.
Familiar with that book?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's a yuck stuck in the muck reference. I wish that could be my own.
Oh, okay.
I can't take all credit for that one.
It felt like yours, David.
Yeah. I mean, don't look at the author of the book, but whatever. Got to boost those sales. No.
Well, I don't know why you thought the details were muddy. I thought that was very clear.
Yeah, very clear.
I was looking into originally I was trying to figure out a little bit more about the cost of the recall. Mm-hmm. Often that's not something that is publicized until well after all the fixes take place. But I happened across an interesting report on auto recalls in general that I thought had some interesting tidbits in it. So I grabbed a few notes from there. But so this was published by a law firm. So take it however you will. Mm-hmm. But they cited a study on recall timing that I thought was interesting. So it was a couple of different universities that worked together to put together this report. It was a study of over 3,000 auto recalls over a 48-year period, and they were analyzing the timing of recall announcements. And they focused on whether and when automakers tended to announce recalls, and discovered that often recalls were batched together. And it was automakers, basically the idea being that less attention would be paid to them if they all kind of did it at once.
Okay.
So it said that the researchers found that 73% of all auto recalls occurred in clusters lasting an average of 34 days with an average of 7.6 recalls. The study revealed that automakers shy away from being the only recall announced in a given period, which would cause their recall to stand out as a leading news item. Instead, they try to hide the recall behind other auto recalls already announced. And they also, so they called the concept hiding in the herd.
Okay.
And they said that often a more trusted automaker such as Toyota would be the first or leading manufacturer to announce a recall, while manufacturers with less impervious reputations would then tag along and announce their recalls afterward. So I thought that was interesting. So I checked. And since the story broke, there have been an additional 11 auto recalls announced,
Woo.
including another one from Toyota. So in the future, maybe we consider Toyota the canary in the coal mine to keep an eye out for what else gets released in the coming days. Because I mean, there's a lot of year left, right? But it felt like a big batch all at once, just in the last, week or so in February. So
it's like this unspoken calendar update where every safety exec has like just an unlabeled event for this one particular date. And it's just like, hey, we have that one thing coming up that we're all going to do.
Well, and it kind of makes sense because as we know, the manufacturers have a lot of flexibility in terms of if and when they issue a recall. Yeah. So they probably do hold them. I mean, that makes...
It makes a lot of sense.
It does.
No, hiding in the herd makes a lot of sense.
Hiding in the herd.
And the details were muddy in terms of, I guess, how like a Toyota, sometimes when these recalls come up, and it just seems like, how can you not imagine mud getting stuck on a brake line?
Yeah, I was kidding about that because it was a story about mud. Right?
Oh, gotcha.
Yep, so I thought that I
thought you were just saying, well, it's pretty clear. It was like, this is 16 inches, this is 17 inches. There's a 1-inch gap, mud.
No,
This is getting muddy.
The details were muddy, but they were about mud.
Yeah,
I was just pretending I didn't get it, but I did.
No, we're really mugging this up.
Okay, yep.
Jeff.
Cut all this. Cut it all
out. Jeff, what were your thoughts on this recall? And, what are your thoughts on this whole idea of hiding in the herd? Just because, you've been exposed to the automotive industry for a long time now.
No, that is very interesting, and it would make a lot of sense, as far as some sort of voluntary collusion, if you will, there, strength in numbers, whatever the case may be. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I think we've seen this a lot. And what I always draw back to is we see, in particular, a lot of recalls dealing with larger vehicles and brakes. Mm-hmm. That's what I started looking at. And this sort of overlapped with being sick this week. I was watching a lot of TV, and American Pickers is on Netflix now. So I was watching that. And one of the things that stood out is when they're looking at some of these bigger, older items, is how over-engineered they were, or they used to be. And that's why they lasted so long. And it made me think a little bit about all of the cost pressures that are now placed on manufacturers. There isn't any of that taking place anymore, it feels like. And I'm not being critical or complaining or saying something's wrong, because ideally those cost savings are being passed along to consumers and helping everybody be more cost effective. But in the meantime, we're missing stuff like this, where potentially just over time, mud, of all things, mud is the culprit here. We have to worry about getting too dirty and wrecking your brakes. That's kind of crazy to think about for a truck. But again, when you're engineering and looking to cut costs, make it lighter, make it fuel efficient, again, these aren't bad things, but they could potentially end up being, these recalls could be a byproduct of this, because we don't have some of those engineering resources allocated to maybe going to the next level or taking it up a notch because we're trying to keep costs down. We're trying to make this fit into a certain price range. This product has to be available at this much. If we put in additional safeguards, if we do more engineering, well, that kicks it up another $5,000. We can't do that. That's going to affect our margins. I think that's playing a big part in some of these recalls as well, that we're seeing for things that are hard on the surface to really understand why this would become an issue. Another thing that was kind of interesting too, according to Motor Trend, actually speculated that a lot of these recalls are for trucks that were not meant to be taken off-road.
Oh, okay.
They were not off-road certified or whatever you want to say. They don't have that particular trim package. So you've got folks who got a truck, and a Tacoma is a very sporty look. It's a cool looking truck. I'm sure folks are wanting to get out there, get a little dirty, get off the road a little bit. And as a result, that could also be playing a part. In fact, there's over 100,000 vehicles being recalled.
No, that was as we were kind of trapped in after a monster truck rally recently, all the trucks just went flying over the curb. And I'm like, the minivan can't do that. We're stuck here. And actually, one benefit of the story coming out, I actually found out that our brand new minivan actually has a recall on it. Apparently, the bolts in the third row that all of our kids were just strapped in need to be tightened.
The Bolt, was that what? Remember we covered that recently? It was, wasn't it Kia?
It was Kia, yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, an issue with Toyota also that the bolts were not tightened to spec in the third row as well. I actually went and looked it up too. I'm like, how did I not notice that when we were covering it? And I'm like, oh, it was a different automaker. But on the list of things to do. All right. Before we jump into, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsor, CAI Solution. This week's episode is brought to you by ShopVue, a CAI solution. Managers and engineers face a wide variety of obstacles on the plant floor that weaken productivity. The root of these problems can often be tied to reliance on outdated data. Using yesterday's information to make today's decisions simply won't cut it. So, what you're going to do about it is you're going to download benefits of real-time production monitoring and manufacturing so you can find out why real-time production monitoring is becoming a must-have for manufacturers like you. So go in the body copy, download it right now, let us know what you think. In case you missed it, stories not as popular on our websites, but could make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, what do you have for us this week?
I selected a story titled Hydrogen Plane Plans Nonstop 9-Day Trip Around the Earth. 9-day is what I said. Nonstop 9-day.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that
It's a lot of time in the air for a plane.
It's so much time. I was surprised that this was not, didn't perform better because when I saw the headline, I was like, what?
Yeah.
So anyway, here's what it's about. The project is called Climate Impulse. It's backed by aviation experts, including Airbus. The goal is of flying a 2-seater plane around the globe nonstop over 9 days, fueled by what's known as green hydrogen. So first test flights are planned for next year, but this round-the-world trip is set for 2028 at this time, at least. So the plane is made with lightweight composites. It's dependent on several untested innovations at this time. So the article says it's far from a sure bet. The project's primary innovator is a man named Bertrand Piccard. And he says that a major airplane manufacturer wouldn't take the risk of producing a prototype such as Climate Impulse in case it fails. So it sounds like a lot of this they're having to do kind of from the ground up. But the way it works is it's using, they describe it as a controlled release of liquid hydrogen from ultra-insulated tanks under the airplane's wings that produce energy that seeps into the membrane of a fuel cell that powers the plane. The plane has a wingspan of an Airbus 320. It's like a big plane.
It's huge, yeah.
One aim is to draw on energy from the turbulence section of the atmosphere, which airplanes could also use one day to help save fuel. That's what they said. So even if the project is successful, experts say that green hydrogen-powered flight on a commercial scale would be decades away at best. So far, this project has lured tens of millions of euros in investment. I chose the story because it's very interesting. I don't know how realistic it is, nor do I think that 9 days uninterrupted flying is necessary really for any application that we would have now or forever.
Yeah.
But it would be an interesting, illustration of the plane's capabilities, I guess. What did you guys think of this?
I think I'm a sucker for these stories.
I know.
I'm a sucker for these stories, but also this guy, Bertrand Piccard, this is not his first rodeo.
I know, yeah.
So yeah, he went around the world in a went around the world in a balloon, went around the world in Solar Impulse, if you remember that.
Impulse, yep.
Solar Impulse was the just giant, small, but like huge wingspan because it was covered in photovoltaic cells. Went around the world. I can't remember how long it took him. But so the fact that he was behind this, that wasn't a surprise. But still, I will go for any sort of PR stunt to help shine a light on potentially emerging technology like hydrogen planes. So I love this kind of stuff. Jeff, what do you think?
Why do they only put 2 seats in it? It's so small.
Yeah.
Man, I would just go insane.
I feel like weight is a pretty serious issue.
But you're just worried about being there for 9 days with Bertrand?
That is so small.
Do you guys have to do you think they're both responsible for binging like 2 different series before this so that way they have something to talk about?
Yeah. So somebody brings
some books on tape or something.
Yeah, somebody brings a bunch of snacks and then
yeah. That's the first thing that jumped out at me. I thought this was going to be a bigger aircraft. When I see a picture here, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
the
weight
thing
is an issue.
Yeah. So outside of that, obviously we continue to see these stories with hydrogen, which is really interesting. I think initially when these first came out, we looked at hydrogen fuel cells. We talked about, I don't know, hydrogen as a fuel source. There's a lot of stuff holding it back. People are still championing it and really moving it forward. So it's going to be interesting to see how this could be another thing that leads to a thing when it comes to hydrogen developments, especially when we look at aerospace and we're looking to cut fuel costs and cut weight and emissions and all that kind of thing.
Well, this is actually the thing, like 2 previous things led to this thing. We're mid-thing.
We're mid-thing?
We're mid-thing.
Sweet.
And producer Eric would like to point out, Anna, that your story is about a Captain Picard, and that is important to a lot of people out there. All right. Also, what do you bring for snacks? Is it just like because weight is such an issue? Is it got to be like a gel, one of those like pastes that just has everything you need to survive? Because I feel like it's got to be the least amount of stuff that you need to live. Right?
And they should put that in the headline that it's also 9 days of eating paste.
Yeah, 9 days of paste and minimal water.
Probably wouldn't want Funyuns on that trip, huh?
Salt tablets, right?
Jeff.
That's the
That's
follow-up
my go-to
article.
for the road trip.
Why'd you bring these Takis, Jeff?
Worst. I think that's a fantastic article. Like worst snacks for 9-day around the globe flight.
Funyuns.
I think Funyuns can get up there. Like the bag opens, just like it's the first day, Jeff. The first day.
Oh, my bad, guys.
Mine, in case you missed it this week, is about the first functional large format 3D printed monolithic boat. So, a lot going on.
A lot of words in that sentence.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you thought mine, in case you missed it last week, was a word salad, here you go. Now, Caracol AM and V2 Group are both in the 3D printing business. Caracol has been around for nearly a decade. V2 is a startup. Well, they partnered up, and today they announced the first functional, large format, 3D printed monolithic catamaran for open waters. It's a 6-meter long boat made as a single rigid structure manufactured using robotic 3D printing technology. The craft was a proof of concept, but the partners believe the process can be industrialized and scaled to adhere to strict naval industry requirements. Now, I picked this story because it reinforces how 3D printing can accelerate production times, minimize material waste, and, make high-quality structures and boats that actually float. And according to the company's large format 3D printing technology could transform boat manufacturing by delivering customizable designs with efficient material usage and significantly reducing environmental impact. So I picked this story, A, because it's cool, B, because they 3D printed something that, is actually a usable boat. But, now, Jeff, we have 3D printed houses and we have 3D printed boats. So got to be close to a 3D printed houseboat next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really connected those things there.
It just makes sense.
I guess.
I mean, obviously, it's not a very sophisticated design. Basically, it's a tiny 3D printed pontoon boat. But what'd you think of it, Jeff?
That was actually the first thing that caught my eye. It's like I was expecting some real intricate, design, and it's pretty straightforward, pretty functional, which is that's what you need. Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense there. I think this is another market that is prime for 3D printing. Yeah. Just because when you look at the cost, boats are expensive to buy. They don't really hold their value, but they last a long time. Yeah. So it's difficult to get into it, and it's hard to figure out exactly what you want. So if 3D printing can come in and sort of alleviate some of those buyer concerns, you may have more people getting interested in buying a boat if it's not such a big economic commitment, I guess, or financial commitment.
We're looking at buying a pontoon right now, and one thing is you get the size you want, and then you get the configuration of how everyone's going to sit. If I could just do that all on one site and figure all right, I want 2 seats here, I want 3 seats there, and it's all going to be a rigid structure, and the only thing I need to replace are maybe the cushions, I don't hate that idea. I don't hate that idea.
Yeah.
Anna, your thoughts on the first functional large format 3D printed monolithic boat?
I think it's cool. I recently read a press release issued by, it was one of the agencies within the Navy, and some of the work they were doing with 3D printing in terms of producing components for applications, maritime applications that were either components that were out of spec now, or discontinued, or just solving problems in like a sandbox environment using all this cutting edge technology. And I do think that, why not a boat?
Yeah.
If you're seeing like all the stuff that the military is doing already, and they've had some really great designs and really great ideas that have been cost saving, time saving, like much faster than you could do it in traditional ways. Sky's the limit.
I mean, if you think about it, that first 3D printed car that they had at IMTS, if you basically flip it upside down and add a little paddle to it, it's essentially a paddle boat.
So it was already made. Like 15 years ago.
You just had to make it. Well, I don't think that one floated. No, I think that one might have had some severe issues floating. Jeff, in case you missed it this week.
So we all pick stories dealing with vehicles of some sort. I picked one talking about the Goodyear Blimp at 100. It's a floating piece of Americana, still thriving. I thought this was a cool story just because it's hard I'm surprised the Goodyear Blimp is actually still kind of chosen to be functional with everything we've got going with drones and other different options for covering sporting events or whatever the case is. The Goodyear Blimp at 100 years old, it is described as the ageless star of the sky. It's a 246 long airship. It was the background for the Daytona 500 last Sunday. It goes about 1,500 feet above the speedway. It's been at the Rose Bowl, obviously countless other sporting events, and it's 100 years old. I just thought this was really interesting. Again, that something is very impractical if you look at it realistically, as the blimp would have hung around this long. But what Goodyear has gotten out of this in terms of promotional exposure and just presence and branding and everything else is pretty amazing. Yeah. I mean, just by basically showing up, that's all it does. And it still gets all this attention and it still does 100 years later. Just a couple little kind of interesting facts. It costs about $100,000 a day to operate the Goodyear Blimp just because of how much helium it takes to float the blimp. And it was actually originally created coming out, it was actually the origins of it come from World War I, where they were looking at lightweight airships for reconnaissance and other military applications. It since became a way for Goodyear to actually do a lot of R&D on different rubber materials and stuff that they use for their core business. But from a promotional perspective, incredible asset. First sporting event was the 1955 Rose Bowl. So,
is this the biggest marketing idea win in history?
I mean, it might be just for how long it's lasted.
Yeah.
And in the fact that, I mean, it does have, I guess technically you could use it to deliver people and materials if you really wanted to, but that's all it is, really. It's a promotional piece. And it's
100 years old, and when you're near it, it still kind of takes your breath away.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Anna, the blimp at 100. Can you believe it?
It hasn't aged a bit. It looks great for its age. It really does. My favorite part about this story was how it talked about how Ice Cube raised the blimp's street cred.
That was the best sentence written this year.
It really was.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if you are interested, they are holding a contest. They're giving 3 people tickets to ride in the Goodyear Blimp.
What?
So.
Oh my goodness.
Get after it. I know Anna would be all over that.
Yeah, we should do it.
Nope.
Okay.
I will.
Jeff,
which would you feel more secure in, the hydrogen plane, the 2-seater with me having a bag of Funyuns, or a ride on the blimp?
The yet to be produced hydrogen plane, or this thing that has been around for 100 years? Definitely this thing.
Still Funyuns though in there.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, we would bring snacks, right?
Yeah, of course.
Then yes.
How about, what would you rather? Would you rather Goodyear Blimp or Oscar Mayer Hot Dog Mobile, Wienermobile? Hot Dog Mobile?
Come on, David.
Wienermobile?
Yeah, definitely the Wienermobile.
Okay.
Yeah, that thing is great.
I mean, what does it take to? Yeah,
Blimp.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually just run through a bunch of lines from Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade.
Sure.
Because, that was 2, right?
No, it was a 3rd.
That was 3rd, yeah.
I would just take the Wienermobile through as many drive-thrus as I could.
Yeah.
Just be like,
guess what I'm going to order? Guess.
Just order a bunch of ketchup packets.
hey, do you guys have hot dogs?
Yeah. Well, Nathan's today starts selling cans of hot dog water. My goodness. Anna, before we get out of here this week, what's your final thought?
So I just want to say, this weekend we kick off Girl Scout cookie selling season in our area in earnest. And So if you see a Girl Scout selling cookies in your area, please find it in your heart to buy a box if you can. I know it's a great organization and it does a lot of good in the communities, and it's a really safe place for a lot of kids. And this year they're getting more money per box back to their individual troops than they ever have. So it's like, it'll be a fun project. I'm like already exhausted thinking about all the work that is going to go into this, but my girls are really excited. So we'll have some fun, I'm sure.
I'm excited for this sales cycle to start as well. And I also like the fact that with Girl Scout cookies, there's not another layer as to receiving what you're buying. Like, I buy the cookies, I open the cookies, I eat the cookies. It's not like, thank you for this coupon book that is worth hundreds of dollars in value, and all I got to do is go and use it and tear out those tiny little squares and then hand them to them, and then realize that, you bought bone-in wings and not boneless wings, and so it doesn't work. I like to have my cookies.
You could eat them immediately and then buy another box if you want.
I'm salivating. I can't wait for the kids to come in.
Just so you know, a word of warning, this is the last year for the Toast Yay. Yeah. So if you like that one, you're going to want to stock up.
Buy them all.
Does your troop clarify every year? David Manti, you still know him, right?
Yeah.
Like, do they make sure so that they can set their projections correctly?
Yeah, they're like, we have to pre-order some extra cases.
Yeah, I feel like sales in my area, once removed, skyrocketed. Because they come to my house multiple times. We know people individually.
You can't say no.
They're always at the grocery store, and I'm just like, well, I am coming for fruit and vegetables, but I should get some Toast Yays.
Yep.
My final thought this week is just that, over the years, there has been a little bit of podcast creep. We've gotten a little long from our roots of the 45 to an hour roots, and I apologize for that. That is all my fault, and we're trying to bring it back. We're trying to rein it in. Basically, I got to quiet myself. So we're coming back down a little bit, making it a little more digestible for everybody. Sorry for the podcast creep. I now understand scope creep and your dilemmas professionally. Jeff, your final thought this week.
Other than recovering, things are going pretty good. I know that things must be going good when the biggest dilemma I have is figuring out which brand of drill I need to buy. So I was going to throw that out there. I'm just kind of curious because it's kind of almost polarizing. Like it's like a Coke or Pepsi thing.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to go Milwaukee or DeWalt. So maybe our listeners, our audience can help us with that a little bit.
Yes.
Let me know, Milwaukee or DeWalt, which way to go. I'm not trying to create any like wars out there.
Yeah.
They're both fine products, good brands. I'm just trying to figure out which way to go.
Yeah. How often do you use it? Use it a lot?
I'll use it more because it'll be better than what I currently have.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. It's an upgrade. Don't you just, based off of proximity, you got to go Milwaukee, right?
I want to get some feedback.
Yeah. Well, because once you're tied to it, then you're tied to all the devices because of all the interchangeable batteries. So really what you're asking for is which two of the brands has the better battery-powered radio. Because that's what you want.
Wow.
Like the worksite radio.
That's really a thing that led to the thing right there.
That is.
You jumped ahead quite a bit.
Oh, no. Anytime you're hanging out, that is whoever has that radio. Right. Yeah. Producer Eric says hands down it's DeWalt. But we shall see. I want to know what the tally is.
Yeah. Let me know.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine, so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. All right, for Anna Wells and Jeff Ranke, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.